Welcome back to Just Another Solar Podcast with Luke Beattie, Carl Jensen. G'day, Carl.
Luke, how are you?
Good, thanks, mate. And industry legend Nigel Morris. G'day.
G'day, mate.
And we're coming to you live today from the Smart Energy Conference 2023 from the Solar Analytics stand. Now, so we're going to give a bit of a wrap of the show, and we have brought in a guest, and it was actually a last-minute guest. Carl literally just went around and he's like, we've got to grab Ria O'Hare from Greenbank Environmental. So we've got Ria here today. G'day, Ria.
Hello, everyone. How are we?
Good to have you on the show, Ria. So for those who don't know anything about renewable energy trading and how the STC system works, Ria's going to give us all a brief.
Before we jump in, I want to get the elevator pitch of what you do, Ria, and then we want to go around and everyone can give a wrap of the show on something they've picked up from it. So do you want to give the elevator pitch for what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Luke. So we trade STCs, VEGs, ESCIs and ACCUs, LGCs and the large-scale solar. We've also just released a new brand called Net Zero Hero, where we're going to offset the installers' fleets so then they can look to be sustainable as well, so then they can promote that through their business.
Wow.
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, didn't you see it? The big green man at the stand. Yeah. So,
what is that? Tell me about that. How do you offset a
So they have to send us their fleet details, their fuel efficiency, their kilometres.
Vehicle fleet.
Vehicle fleets, yeah. So when they're driving around Australia installing solar, they can actually offset their kilometres. And we'll do that if you're a Greenbank client. It's pretty exciting stuff. Net Zero Hero.
Now, I did notice that your stand looks almost like a talk show. Yes. I think we said that. It had the couches set out, facing outwards. So how's the show been for you guys?
It's been fantastic. I think it's been one of the busiest shows, but I think I've got a lot out of it. There's been a fairly diverse audience that have come past. What do you guys reckon?
Yeah, same actually. We've had a really good steady flow, a little bit quieter on day two, which is actually perfect for day two, I think. I wasn't out till 3:30 in the morning on the dance floor doing cartwheels like you, Ria. I was in bed nice and early. Yeah, yesterday was really good. It was strong all day. Really good inquiries, not so many tyre kickers.
So my wrap-up of the show, well, we haven't, iStore didn't have a stand at this particular event. It's peak season for hot water, so everyone is absolutely flat out, and we just couldn't devote the manpower to run a stand for 2 days. So what I have learnt from walking around other people's stand is it's much easier to walk around and talk to people at their stands than it is to run your own. Yep. So that's my takeaway. And it also means that you end up having a lot of meetings. So we have spent a lot of time downstairs at Planar, either drinking beer or eating food. I think I've eaten enough for a week in 2 days because everyone says, would you like a bite to eat? And okay, we better order some more food. So I think I've been pretty well fed this particular event.
I think you make a good point. I reckon my best meetings and interaction with people was at networking events or informally taking them away. So the Solar Cutters event on Tuesday night was an absolute ripper. And it was a bit controversial because it was a ticketed event. To date, Solar Cutters has been free booze, everyone come along. This one, you either had to be a member or you had to pay to get in. And what that meant is a lot of the dross or the rubbish and the freeloading guys who cause trouble, hate to be very honest there, they weren't there. So the calibre
to the dross.
So the calibre of people at the Solar Cutters was great, and it wasn't packed to the rafters. There was certainly a lot of people there, but the conversations...
250, right? 250 people.
Yeah, sure. But the calibre of people is excellent. Some of the best chats I had were with people like Andy McCarthy, who's had some big news, great success story, 13 years in the industry, and he's quite stoic now. He's going to take a bit of time with the family, and he's the sort of guy you know he's going to come back and do something significant. Aidan Jenkins, one of the founders of Infinite Energy, has reappeared. And they've got a new enterprise. He's been busy behind the scenes doing other things, but he's come back like he'd never left the industry. I said it's a bit like riding a bike, both on the floor and doing the deals plus the extracurricular stuff. I think he jumped back in. So great to see excellent people back in there.
So probably had a do not compete or something with the people that bought the business, yeah.
Well, Sumitomo pulled out. They actually shut down Infinite, so I don't think that would be relevant. So moving along, Ria, you actually chaired some of the panels, and do you have any takeaways, anything interesting?
Yeah, I do. So I was chairing a session yesterday at 1:30, and that was a great audience, and it was a great panel. Did anyone go to those chairing sessions? There was the lady with the light. Oh, what is it called? No.
The lady light?
The lady light. No, it's not the lady light. Anyway, I'll get back to you. I'll put it in the bottom of the podcast.
There might have been some small amount of memory loss associated with the end phase party.
Yes, the end phase party went off. Yeah, the end phase party was good. Yeah, there was free drinks to that. You didn't have to pay to get into that one. That was good. But no, the panelling yesterday was fantastic. Great guests, like Wayne Smith from the Smart Energy Council always says, is rinse and repeat, right? So day 2, it's really exciting.
What were you talking about on your panel?
So we had a couple of guests. I was just chairing the session. So we had Jack Long from Solar Cutters, which was great. Doris from SMA, and I had a couple of other people. It was fantastic. It was great. Really, really good. Really informative.
So what does Doris do at SMA?
I believe she's the general manager of SMA. I'm not sure. Good question, though.
Has anyone got a program handy? So you're also involved in the management of the Smart Energy Council.
Yes.
Would you say, representing the Smart Energy Council, that this has been a success? Because as an outsider, I'd say absolutely it has been. It's been a really good show. What's your take?
Yeah, we've got a new installer membership program as well that we just released yesterday. So John Grimes was talking about that, and I believe that's $30 a month. I think it's been a fantastic show. I think people are going to take that up, and I don't see why they wouldn't. You get a lot of benefits.
And you got a selfie with Saul Griffith, Luke.
I've actually been collecting selfies, so I'll put them on socials. I've got about 50 of them, just of key people, great people in the industry. I'm sure you've been there, but I've got a theory on John Grimes. Can I share it? I reckon John has a body double. Because everywhere you turn, John is there. He must be so busy, man. Like, he's here, then he's there. Everywhere I turn, there's John Grimes. And congrats to him for doing such a great job.
One of the things that a lot of people have said that was great about this show is that because it's still I don't know what the numbers are. Does anyone know what the numbers are through the door? I'm gonna guess 5,000 at least, maybe 7,000. So it's not all energy busy, but all the installers I've talked to have said that's really good because you're not getting smashed. You can go up to a booth, you can find someone, you can get their attention, you can have a good conversation. So it's a really nice alternative to the sort of mania of all energy, and it's just not quite as intense. Unless you're on the dance floor till 3:30 in the morning, are you?
So as per usual, lots of new battery players or new battery products. So everybody's stand seems to have a battery on it. Some inverter brands that we haven't really seen take off yet in Australia have had amazing stands, and there's a decent credit there for the Smart Energy Council to get all of these people together to pay for this event. Similarly, the talk that Luke and I went to this morning with Saul Griffith. We had the New South Wales Energy Minister and the Defence Minister was talking about defence spending on critical infrastructure in energy generation and how we'd have to call on our industry to do that for the Defence Department. Obviously another major contributor to Australia's energy demands feeding that beast. So that was quite inspiring to listen to those guys.
We also had a bunch of people come through our booth actually from government. The reason we're running late is because there was a guy here from ACT government. We had guys from New South Wales government here yesterday, particularly one of the guys who's the program manager from the Solar for Low Income Homes project, which is an amazing project that's just been rolling out for some years and is really starting to ramp up now. So and in fact, I was had a long chat yesterday with a great lady from the Clean Energy Regulator as well. Then I know Mark Williamson and Matthew Power were both giving presentations as well about updates to all the stuff that's going on in the Clean Energy Regulator, particularly around the accreditation. And I was... I'm not going to mention her name, but I was asking her about the update on the accreditation scheme and who's put their hat in the ring. And she was completely not telling me. I tried every trick in the book and she wouldn't give me any names. I did establish that it was more than one. That was as far as I got.
Are you going to speculate for us, Nigel?
Well, why don't we speculate? We could speculate wildly. I'm going to speculate. This is complete speculation. But I'm going to speculate that the Smart Energy Council, there's a lot of rumours around that the Smart Energy Council might have thrown their hat in the ring with a partner. I'm going to speculate that I reckon maybe Cutters have thrown their hat in the ring. That's wild speculation. Outside of that, that's actually was my question to them, because applications closed on March 15th. So they are now in the sort of process of working their way through those applications and working out who is going to run it. I discussed the prospect of there being more than one accreditation body and what that meant, and that is not ruled out by any means. So there could end up being more than one body. And we had a good yarn about what the implications were, both positive and negative. So they're certainly not ruling it out. We know there's more than one player with their hat in the ring. And shout out to the Clean Energy Council, whether you love them or hate them. One of the big issues is, of course, all the lessons they've learnt over, 20 years or 15 years of running the accreditation program. All those lessons are their IP, right? They've invested massively in that. And as was highlighted in this conversation, they've actually cross-funded it when it wasn't financially viable through other services and sponsorships and everything else. So, finding a way to make the program better than it was, so smoother, faster, easier, more transparent, whatever, that's a real key goal, apparently, that the Clean Energy Regulator are trying to deliver, but also trying to make sure that whoever delivers it can do it in a financially viable way if they don't have other services that they can cross-subsidise it with. And, of course, the issue of if there's more than one player running the scheme and they don't have quite as much economy of scale, how's that going to play out? So an announcement is going to come about how the new scheme would work somewhere around July or August this year. They were adamant that they were going to spend a lot of time preparing so that they could create a really clear pathway for installers to transition from one program to the other and minimise disruption, really cognizant of minimising disruption. So there's an awful lot going on behind the scenes around accreditation. Carl, you pulled a really weird face on me when I was wildly speculating on who is going to go in. You've clearly got a view.
I see all of these accreditation type things as trying to run a kindergarten with 10,000 people. So no one wants that job. It's very difficult. And hence why the CEC has probably decided that they don't want it, because it's a kindergarten with 10,000 people in it. Everyone, opinions are like arseholes, right? Everybody's got one. Whether that's a job for the master electricians or NECA, or they seem like a better fit to me than anybody, as opposed to the Clean Energy Council or the Smart Energy Council or any other kind of council. Master electricians, NECA, they're already set up. They've already got some kind of licensing arrangements in place that they run now, and it seems like a logical path forwards for the industry that's not massively disruptive either. But the reason why I pulled that face was that our special guest twiddling her thumbs here, we want to know about STCs, and in particular the reason why I met Ria was one of the Smart Energy Council working groups, and she expressed an interest in heat pump STCs. So that's a massive growth segment for the STC trading business. So over to Ria to give us some insight into that.
So before I do that, I did recall that company that I was talking about earlier, and it's Pollinate Energy Lights up India. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. They're trying to get to 20,000 lights before 1st of July, I believe. So that's, really cool. Everyone should look it up and get behind it, of course, and I know Greenbank will. So, back onto the STCs. What was your question? So it was around water heating?
Water heating.
Yes. New South Wales has just brought out their water heating rebates, so that's pretty exciting. You now get about 25 ESCIs and about 25 STCs for a heat pump in New South Wales.
What's that worth?
I would say it's almost worth probably about $2,000. Close to 1,600 to $2,000, depending on where they're trading. Yeah, so it is exciting. There's also commercial heat pumps as well, so the commercial water heating, which is really exciting. I'd imagine that there's going to be huge amounts of installs going over the next 18 months, so we'll see a big growth in that. The price has been pretty stable on STCs, so we're still looking at $39.95. ESCIs are trading at maybe $31. We've got the LGCs close to $55. What else is there? VEGs, we're trading at $70.
Speaking of Veeks, Ria, we hear that some people trade Veeks for large solar systems. Can you explain how that has come about?
Yeah, so that's on the measurement and verification methodology. You can create Veeks for something like a 150 kilowatt system, and sometimes they're finding that better as a return on investment. Instead of getting 35 to 40 grand for your STCs, they'll go 150 kilowatts or 200 kilowatt system, and then they'll generate the Veeks over a period of time. And then they get the Veeks
like
up front.
LGCs?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's up front, so you actually get your Veeks up front. Yeah, which is fantastic.
In comparison with the price of the STCs, so STCs are worth around, 36 cents a watt, somewhere there, and Veeks would work out at
$70 per Veek.
$70 per Veek. And how does it translate? How many Veeks do we get for, say, 150 kilowatts? Would it work out to be a similar kind of amount of money as STCs or more?
I would have to say it's much more. I'd have to do the calculations for you and come back, but I'd imagine it'd be much more, almost double.
So this could explain why the industry is struggling to retain people in the domestic rooftop space, because if there's more money to be had, then the installers can get paid more money, and therefore they leave the residential space to do commercial installs.
Yeah, I haven't really looked at it that way, but I think I agree with that statement 100%.
Now, the other big question that keeps coming up is around batteries and battery rebates. So everyone's looking at state governments, federal government to see. Piss off, Carl. I've been sitting here and Carl's had the microphone a bit too low, so I keep holding it up and now he's just pushed my hand up. Thanks, mate. There's a lot of talk around battery rebates and what that would look like. Now, some people have mentioned it may look similar to an STC type scheme. Now, is that something that could be achieved, and what would it look like?
Yeah, so we're looking at about 21 STCs for a battery storage system. I'm not sure of the size, but if you quantify that, it could be anywhere from $840. So if you've got your STCs for your panels and then your STCs for your battery storage system, it's a really good incentive for homeowners to uptake batteries.
There was no announcement from any ministers, state or federal, about rebates during this conference. Was there? There was a lot of talk about the fact that they might announce something, but nothing announced as such that I'm aware of.
There has been around electrification, and there's in the talk that we're in this morning. One quick takeaway that was really interesting is Saul was saying that he said that there's 100 million devices that need to be swapped out at end of life. So that includes hot water systems, so in come the heat pumps, space heating and cooling, and all the other little devices that aren't electric. So that was very interesting to talk about that. But then they were going further and saying that with industry and businesses, that they'd be looking to offset, have tax offsets for companies that are looking to electrify. So it may not be a rebate, but effectively they get that money back. So that's one way they were doing it. And they were also talking about mechanisms of adding solar and batteries and so forth. So the Honourable Wyatt Roy, who was the youngest member of Parliament in federal government, he came out of government, now he's working for SunDrive. So they're looking towards doing solar cells that have copper instead of silver, moving towards local manufacturing of panels. And he made a really good point. His point was this. He said the US came up with this tax offset scheme so that you could encourage business to electrify, to go solar, and to get manufacturing going. And he said what the Canadians did is they said, that's a good idea, copy, paste. And he said, we've got this whole idea in Australia that, we look at other countries that are doing good things and we're reluctant to copy and paste. We want to contextualise it. His point was, if there is a policy like that works, and it's going to help our cause to decarbonise, get the solar out there and the batteries and the electrification, well, copy, paste, let's do it.
Makes a whole lot of sense. And Sol dropped by our booth earlier on today and was kind of heading down the same route. And of course, his track record in the US is around exactly this kind of stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's quite a push to try and do that, mate. So that makes heaps of sense. I want to drop a plug in, actually, because talking about heat pumps and the interest with the new rebate that's just announced, we've got a beta tool that we've already released, and I think I shot it through to you guys. Only works in New South Wales at the moment, but we've helped develop a beta tool to allow people with or without solar to do that calculation and work out how much they could save by electrifying. So how much would you save if you put solar on? How much would you save if you added a battery? And importantly, for the first time ever, how much would you save if you put a heat pump on? So we've got a little calculator that allows either people who already have it or don't have it and want to mix and match these different technologies, we've got a little tool that's about to come out, New South Wales focused initially, very, very soon. And part of the reason for that is because we all know in this room, we all know that a heat pump makes sense, but the average punter doesn't. Right? You've talked about this, Carl, so much. So we're looking for people in New South Wales to test this beta tool. So anyone who's interested, hit us up afterwards and I'll send you a link.
Also a good talking point, Luke. Of course, I got here in the electric car, and we have achieved the electrifying everything at home, but really interesting, I managed to do the whole trip for zero cost. So the NRMA has hundreds of fast chargers in New South Wales, and in fact the conference centre downstairs has got at least a dozen level 2 three-phase chargers that are free for anyone who turns up at the ICC. Pretty happy with the zero emissions trip.
But Carl, you stopped and charged, and did you camp in the car? And how was that experience, mate?
As it turns out, whilst there's a guy called Tesla Tripping and he's essentially driving around Australia and living in the back of the car, it sucks. So I couldn't really find a good position to sit in the front seat or the back seat or with the seats down. But so I definitely won't be taking the car camping with the wife. That's not going to happen. We'll get a hotel.
I wanted to actually mention the chargers downstairs, because the reason there are so many chargers here is because of the conference that happened recently, which was fully charged. And of course, they needed some infrastructure for all these EVs to be able to do test drives and everything else. So they already had some downstairs, but huge shout out to everyone. I don't even know who drove that, whether it was the fully charged guys, but the consequence of having that show here is that there's now a big bank of EV chargers downstairs. So little nudge for the Smart Energy Council. That's something we could be doing at every show, right? And in fact, All Energy, I'm going to put the shout out to them as well, that they could use that as an opportunity to provide facilities, to be funded by the show, to leave a legacy behind, because you just benefited from the legacy of the last show.
Actually, Nigel, now you remind me. So that's the most expensive part of the whole trip. Parking downstairs was $50 for the day.
Well, for what it's worth, you are in one of the most expensive cities in the world, and I'm staying at a hotel across the road for the couple of days while this on, and I brought my vehicle in because I was carting all the merch in, and it's cheaper to park downstairs than it is to park at the hotel across the street. So, in Sydney terms, Carl, it's a bargain.
Is that the electric motorbike?
No, unfortunately, I have limitations for how much merch I can carry on the bike, so I'm in the car.
Speaking of which, Nigel, earlier on in the show, you were talking to us about some figures around the Livewire and global sales, which I think are worthy of sharing with others. Tell us all about it.
Oh, yeah. So I've got a little website on the side called Moto Electro, motoelectro.com.au, where I publish electric motorcycle stuff. And I stumbled across the latest figures, which are publicly available, from Livewire, the company that Harley-Davidson spun out when it produced the Livewire. They made two announcements recently. One was about the full production release of the S2 Del Mar, which is their kind of middleweight bike. That's been launched. Just taking a selfie here, listeners, forgive us. There you go. The S2 Del Mar's been launched. They've lowered the price, so you can buy that in the US now for $15,000. Really, really nice middleweight little bike. But as part of that story, they announced their sales figures, and it blew my mind and wasted hours of my whole day on my weekend doing research, because they announced that in the full year 2022, Livewire sold 597 bikes, which is not many. In the first quarter of this year, they sold 67 bikes, which is also not many. And this sent me down a rabbit warren of investigation about volume of all sorts of different bikes and electric vehicles in general, of course, focused on bikes. But here's the shortest possible version. Between the three top electric motorcycle brands in the world, which is basically, in my view, Livewire, Energica and Zero, Livewire sells about 570 bikes at the moment. Energica sold, by my estimate, according to the best numbers we can get, about 750 bikes, and Zero, who have a lower cost bike, sold around about 2,500. Now, that is not very many. That's obviously, startup territory for any of these companies when they've invested billions and billions of dollars. However, for motorcycle fiends, they would know the names MV Augusta, they would know the name Bimota, and a number of other fairly high-end exotic motorcycle brands who've been in the market for decades, and they sell about the same volume, about the same price, about the same volume. So when you look at it in that context, although it's not very many bikes for the primary electric motorcycle brands, they're actually already competing in the very successfully in the premium segment of the motorcycle market. The thing that also blew my mind was if you go right up to the other end of the scale of motorcycle production, Honda is the biggest producer in the world. They produce about 14.5 million motorcycles a year of all types, right? So we're talking every kind of bike known to man, right? So it's really not a fair comparison, but they're number one. At number two is an Indian company called Hero, who do a sort of lightweight commuter that you'll see everywhere in India. The third most commonly produced two-wheeler in the world, out of all types of two-wheelers, is a Chinese-made full electric scooter. And in fact, the year before last, they were number 2 in the world. So right at the top end of the motorcycle market, the second most built electric motorcycle in the world is now electric. And down at the premium end, although it's low volume, there are 3 brands competing highly successfully, I would argue, with a whole lot of really, really well-established brands. So it melted my brain. I don't know, I get excited about this stuff. And if you haven't seen it, Savage are over in the corner. Big shout out to them, Australian-made electric motorcycle that you can buy today. Amazing, amazing machine. Hope they really succeed.
So do you think, Nige, currently it's competing against the luxury end? Is it just price that's keeping it from competing in the mainstream?
Yeah, it's a combination of price and range. The performance is clearly there, right? No, very few people will argue that the performance isn't there. It's clearly there. So it's about people feeling confident, like you, Carl, that you can get in your car and drive from Melbourne to Sydney, right? It's about people feeling confident that the range is going to be practical in the real world. And then it's about the spend. What could I buy if I didn't spend $100,000 on a Tesla? What are my alternatives, right? And Tesla have found that kind of breaking point. And so in the premium motorcycle end, I think we're in about the same space.
Now, Nige, you got to do a shameless plug for your brand. We've got Ria here, and you haven't really given that much of a shameless plug. So do you want to tell us some of the new stuff that you guys are doing, areas of development, things that people can look out for?
Yeah, sure. Did everyone see what I did there? I just threw something shiny in front of Nigel and then he just went for it, right? I love that. So the new stuff is just the installer offsetting and, offsetting of your vehicles and your fleet. So if you're not trading with Greenbank already, you should be. We've been around for 20 years now. We're at every show, Smart Energy Council, All Energy, and we do a lot of government work as well to support the industry. So not only do you get an STC agent, you actually get a supportive brand and people.
I think it's worth highlighting that your mum, who I worked with when we were both a lot younger, is a solar industry pioneer as well. And you grew up... Hall of Famer. Yeah, Hall of Famer. Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, it's such a wonderful story. I love generational solar industry success stories, and to see you, Ria, taking over the mantle and, taking the business into the next generation, I just think it's wonderful.
Yeah, thanks. It really is. She's a mentor of mine. I obviously look up to her. She's helped me through personally and professionally. I also want to plug AWISE as well and what the women are doing there, and both women and men doing there. They're a great organisation. They're going for non-for-profit, they announced yesterday, so that's great. Absolutely fantastic. So I think we all should get behind them. And, let's see more of it.
I was having a chat to Sam Craft about that, and she said with the not-for-profit status, they can access a lot of grants and things that they couldn't do, which in turn means that there can be a lot more framework put in. Because from what I can see, it's been carried on the shoulders of people like Sam Craft and Christine and Lily and Keisha, but it looks like the new generation coming through at the morning tea yesterday, which was excellent, really good event. We had Thornton, one of your mob, Nige, from Solar Analytics. She gave a speech and won the Wise in Star Award. And there was also Lauren from Supply Partners. What's her last name? I can't remember. I met her at the show. She was an absolute firecracker. So very little notice, got up to give a speech. Very engaging and full of life. And I was speaking to Sam Kraft about it. I'm like, my goodness, next generation of Awides is already coming through.
So, like one of the sessions that you and I both sat in on, they said that we need to be, if we've got any chance of hitting Australia's renewable energy targets globally, we need to be installing 22,000 solar panels every day, which means we have a massive workplace shortfall. And at the moment, we're installing somewhere around 3.5 gigawatts of residential STC type solar, and then there's probably about another 3 gigawatts of solar farm type solar, and that number should be closer to 60 gigawatts, not 6. So we're not missing the mark by a factor of 10 at the moment, which is pretty crazy. So all of us are going to be well and truly employed into the future, and we need 10 times more of us.
Now, we went to Dr. Google yesterday about gigawatt production capacity for panels. Carl, do you want to share about that?
Yeah, that was quite interesting. So Google pulled up a couple of results, one which was from the International Energy Agency, and it predicted that by 2030 manufacturing capacity would be 600 gigawatts. And then I looked it up on Wikipedia, and the actual manufacturing capacity in 2022 was 1,530 gigawatts, which is absolutely nuts. So we're way ahead of the game in terms of manufacturing capacity, and it seems to be going up by around 400 gigawatts a year. And to put that into perspective, when REC sold a couple of years ago, all of these major type businesses are sold based on the value of the plant and equipment. So they had a production capacity around 1.4 gigawatts, and they sold for $700 million US. So for the sake of argument, for each gigawatt of production capacity, you need around $500 million, $500 million. So while we were asleep during COVID, the Chinese spent $200 billion building 400 gigawatts worth of manufacturing capacity, which is just nuts. So when we heard today about Australia's mission to try and build our own solar panel manufacturing here, it's a drop in the bucket. We want to try and put in 5 gigawatts worth of production capacity to service our market, but the global production capacity these days is absolutely spectacular.
I'm going to throw in a couple of bits of just little gossips and stories and things. And, on that topic, I also had a couple of people come up and talk about the enormous effort that's going on quietly behind the scenes to actually analyse the entire supply chain of PV and work out what actually makes sense to do in Australia. And there's some really, really good people working on that to actually work out, does it make sense to be upstream or downstream, or, where can we actually leverage Australia's capabilities and, economics and everything the best. So there's some amazing stuff going on in that space. Secondly, the other thing that really struck me about this conference was two things. One was, how many of the next generation, some of whom we've talked about, but so many young people who I've met during the course of the conference. And it's so good to see that next generation coming up and to see mentoring schemes going in and apprentices learning from, other people in the industry so that next generation can come through. And right up at the other end, of course, there's been an awful lot of late night, I really love you, mate, conversations going on, especially around some of the older generation. And there are a lot of solar pioneers just quietly skulking around the hall after decades and decades and decades. And I want to give a particular shout out to one of them, who is a guy called Jeff Stapleton, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame yesterday, along with, I think it was Simon Corbell from the ACT. But Jeff Stapleton is one of the absolute pioneers in this industry. I think he's like 44 years in solar or something. And so the next time you see an old guy or girl walking around the hall at a solar conference, think very carefully about the wisdom that they might be able to impart on you, because there is so much experience in some of the older people who have vast amounts of experience. So yeah, I think that was the most inspiring thing. And actually that reminds me of the third thing, that was talking to some of the people who've been in the industry now for 10, 15, 20 years, particularly business owners. I kept saying I think I said it 5 times, my God, listen to the maturity in the business conversation that you're having. I spoke to one who was talking about how they are having team building conversations about what their purpose is, and how he's instilling focus and vision in his team by having conversations about focus. And so, it's so wonderful to see people who are 10 or 15 or 20 years in, and the level of maturity in the way people are thinking about their businesses is just inspiring, absolutely inspiring.
Just touching on that, I think going around the hall, there's so much new technology. You've seen the development and the sophistication of solutions, and there's a lot of value in that. But coming back to what you were saying about the people, I realise, looking at this, that the greatest currency and greatest value in this industry is the people. That goes first and foremost. And you mentioned the older generation and the pioneers and people who had brought something and have a lot to offer. But I also put it that meeting some of the younger people coming through now, it flows in both directions. It's amazing seeing that enthusiasm. They've just joined the industry. They're fairly new and they've got that fire and that passion, and it sort of encourages us old folk to actually, it keeps the excitement in it, man. We're in a great industry. We're changing the world literally in lots of ways, and the next generation's coming through. So that's my takeaway, and I'm going to throw around before we wrap up quickly everyone's takeaway or any comments you want to make before we wrap up. Carl, any key takeaways, bits of wisdom, or things you want to add?
No, the takeaway is that there's been a lot of money invested here, and it's a far bigger, better show than it was last year. Last year probably was a first crack at the cherry, so to speak, and this is a real conference. And we've had some incredible speakers, and there's lots of information sessions. So I think as an event, it's really matured, and I wouldn't hesitate to recommend that people join the Smart Energy Council because the membership is absolutely a pittance in comparison with what the industry is, and that should not be the case. We should definitely be supporting the Smart Energy Council going forward.
I totally agree with that. I think we're all a really rare breed, and I think we all learn from each other and we lean on each other, and we couldn't do it without the support of all the installers and the distributors, manufacturers, and everybody that's in the whole life cycle of installing solar. And we really are changing the world.
We can't do without the Springers boys holding up the dance floor later in the night too.
Handstands, I heard. Handstands. Thanks, Kate from Greenbank.
Well, speaking of the Springers, we still haven't had them on the show, Luke.
We were going to have them last All Energy, and we sort of teed it up for the last day, which was an absolutely stupid idea because everyone's just not in their best shape. Everyone's spoken for days on end, and so we'll definitely need to get the Springers. They're coming across to Intersolar. Be good to catch up with those guys there. We haven't thrown to Nige for your key takeaways or anything you'd like to add, mate.
Just actually want to thank Kathleen Ryan, who's been in the background. If you've heard the laughing and all the loud noise, solar pioneer and industry legend Kathleen, award winner, in fact, as well, Solar Colour Award. Yeah, legendary Kathleen Ryan. You can't do a show like this without having people who just, in the background, make stuff work. Organising the details, making sure that people feel welcome, people feel warm. So, it's a big machine, this whole show and the whole industry and all solar businesses. And so, big shout out to the people who are hidden in the background making things work.
So that's pretty much all we've got time for. I reckon we could sit here for another 3 hours, but we're just going to wrap it up and say, it's been a really good show. Thanks to the Smart Energy Council and to all the great people in the industry. It's been really good. So thanks for listening. Please subscribe, like, share it around to anyone who might get benefit. Have a good one. Cheers.